The meeting is ready to stream when you're ready, Chair.
All right, everybody, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Thanks for blowing in tonight on this blustery, windy day. I'd like to acknowledge with great respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, and we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. With that, we have the near-term, long-term, and the regular committee of the whole agenda for tonight, April 4th. If there are no additions or objections, we'll consider those agendas approved by unanimous consent. Not seeing any issue there, so they are so approved. Councillor Parkinson? Oh,
sure. Sorry, Chair, but I would just point out that the long-term agenda needs refreshing. A lot of the stuff is sort of past was supposed to have happened already and hasn't. And it just, I know there's a big job, but if it could be refreshed at some point in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Before we move on, I just want to point out that Councillor Jansen had a medical appointment. So depending on his timing, he may be joining us a bit later if he's able to. So with that, we have one set of minutes from March the 21st. If there are no errors or omissions, we will adopt them by unanimous consent. Not seeing anybody, so they are so adopted. Public participation. I understand we don't have anybody registered to speak tonight via phone, so we'll open it up to the public in the gallery on the bride side of the hall. Don't see anyone clamoring to get up, so we will move on to new business report from Dennis Carlson on Royal Bay Latoya South Parks Plan. Dennis.
Before we get started tonight, I will be providing an overview of the process that brought us up to this point regarding the Latoya South Parks Plan, and then I will turn the presentation over to the Gablecraft team that are here tonight. So in terms of some context, the Latoya South Sub-Area Plan was formed as part of the rezoning for Latoya South, and it was added as a document to the OCP at the time of rezoning. The sub-area plan included the parks concept, which you see on the slide in front of you. And it really just contained like the broad policies and intent for aspects such as parks, pathways, and plazas. Also considered by council as part of the rezoning, was the terms of reference. These were adopted by council prior to the rezoning for Latoya South, and it provided a framework for the creation of the Latoya South Parks Plan. Also, as a part of the Latoya South rezoning was the development agreement. This included a number of provisions, and it was really sort of the guidelines for how this development would proceed. And regarding the parks plan, it laid out some specifics in terms of the preparation and adoption of the parks plan. So in addition to the terms of reference, it specified the amount of park that had to be provided. It did exclude the commons, which is the shaded area on that plan, from the parks plan. So the area referred to as identified as a quarry is really the subject of the parks plan that you're going to see tonight. And it also specified that the parks plan required a council approval. All this was necessary in order for the application to move forward in terms of achieving subdivision. So the parks plan is fairly critical to this whole process. This slide provides a sort of an overview of the proposed park areas. And Ben and his team will talk about this in more depth later. But essentially, the requirement is that there be 17 acres of parkland provided within Latoya South, including 1 acre within the commons. One change that we've done since the original concept plan is there was a neighborhood park identified for adjacent to the city-owned land. Staff's opinion was that that was not the ideal location for a neighborhood park. It was kind of on the edge of everything. And instead, we have bolstered up the pathway through that connects through from the city land, past the Royal BC Museum and up to Latoya, and made that a much stronger element than it was initially. It's because I touched it. Yeah, we're good. Okay. So turning to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, this was a document that was adopted by council subsequent to the rezoning of Latoya South. It did identify Quarry Park, which is a major park within Latoya South as an upland community park. And it did make a number of recommendations, which will be coming to you later as a staff report regarding the use of the community amenity funds towards provision of additional amenities within Latoya South park system, and also the potential acquisition of additional lands for recreational facilities. Marcy, can you kick me over one more? Okay. In terms of staff recommendation, we're recommending that committee recommend to council that the parks plan that you'll be presented tonight be approved, and that staff provide a series of reports following the approval of the parks plan, including the use of community amenity funds towards additional park amenities, the acquisition of additional lands in Latoya South for recreation facilities, the allocation of funds currently being held by the city towards field development in Royal Bay, and also the implementation of the proposed public art master plan for Latoya South. So that concludes my presentation. If there's committee has any questions at this time, I'll turn the presentation over to the Gablocraft team. Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions there, Dennis, and we'll go with Councillor Day first.
Thank you. I'm just curious about the lands adjacent to Machosen Road and next to Latoya Creek Park that were tree planted by the Scouts. Are those trees being protected or retained?
Through the chair, I think that's a question I would defer to the Gablocraft team to answer. I'm not familiar with that particular aspect.
Thank you.
We've got Councillor Kobayashi and then Councillor Baxter. Doug.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I just have about 3 questions here. It says it in the plan here that the timing of the park will be triggered by the associated subdivision application. What's the timing of that then? Can someone answer what that timing is?
I think Ben can probably speak to that, but in our experience, well, not our experience, we are already in the process of considering their subdivision applications for those lands. So approval of the parks plan is fairly key to advancing the subdivision.
Okay, thank you. And second question, I think it's a question for you, Jen, through the chair. Could you just remind council about, the how the community amenity fund works, the contribution. So everything that comes from Latoya South would potentially go into this then, and it's not from the general overall community amenity fund. Is that a correct statement?
Through the chair, no, not quite. To be clear, our community amenities are not tied by geographic area that drives those amenities. Certainly helpful information to know, but the city's community amenities, some have specific restrictions depending on the zoning under which those amenities were contributed. Otherwise, the use is more general in nature and would be used for any eligible works, regardless of the geographic area.
Okay, so that leads me, oh, sorry. Do you want to add something, Dennis?
Dennis, go ahead.
If I may just add to that, in our discussions when we were developing this parks plan, in discussions with Gablocraft, which is really sort of underpins this recommendation from staff, and I'll let Ben speak to this maybe when they do their presentation, but it was really the desire on the part of Gablocraft that some of the funds that they were contributing as a community amenity through the rezoning process could be considered by council for use of amenities, much like the washroom facility in Latoya North. Same idea.
Okay, so that leads me to my second question right now. So is there going to be, how much of a shortfall potentially is there between, what we have in the community amenity fund for this and what the potential capital costs are going to be?
Great question through the chair. I don't have that information tonight. Our community amenity fund currently is just shy of $4 million. We absolutely expect, that the costs will be higher than what we currently have in the amenity fund. As you've seen in the report before you tonight, we will be returning with detailed information both on the restrictions within the current community amenities that we have, as well as cost estimates for the potential use of those amenities under this plan and this area.
Okay, thanks very much. I didn't think you'd have it. And the last question,
Sorry, Councillor Kobayashi.
Sorry, I was just going to build on what Jen's saying, is that as we said in the staff recommendation, we will be coming back with a report. As part of that, we will be looking at the types of amenities that potentially could be added using the community amenity funds. But as Jen has pointed out, we would then balance that against how much funds are available, and all that would be form part of the presentation that would be advanced back to committee.
okay, so that would be part of the capital plan then, if additional funds would be, if you don't have enough in the community amenity funds, then it would be in the capital plan, I would assume.
Through the chair, to clarify, any expenditure of the city's community amenities will form part of a budget consideration for council.
And so the last question related is the annual operating costs of 276,000 that's been estimated in the plan. Where the funds for that come from? Is that just the normal revenue you'd get from Latoya South, or is there a tax lift involved in this?
Great question through the chair. So those are preliminary estimates. Those will be ongoing into perpetuity. And so we would be recommending that they are funded through taxation. And so it would form consideration in future budget deliberations, but ultimately would require either a tax increase or allocation of some other sustainable funding. But certainly a portion will be taxation, if not all.
So is there, I guess, just still following on that question then, is you must have an idea, some type of idea of what the revenue that would be generated from Latoya South? Yes, no?
I don't tonight.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, in the terms of reference, I think that's the right name for this document. The park's terms of reference, it mentions that there will be 3 pedestrian trail connections between the development and the Torre Creek Park. And it's only obvious on this plan where one of them is. Can you tell me where the other 2 are?
Through the chair, if I may, Councillor Baxter, if we go through the presentation from the Gablecraft team, and if it's not clarified as part of that, then perhaps I could suggest
Okay,
we turn to that after.
I shall wait for that then. Thank you. You might be going to tell me that in answer to all of my questions. So this drawing here baffled me. I have no idea what I'm looking at.
I believe that is one of the parks that is actually included within the commons. So it's outside of the terms of reference for the parks plan.
It appears to be in the park plan.
Right. But there are some elements in that document that relate primarily to the area within the commons.
Okay. And a question about, I was intrigued by this 8-meter wide trail right of way, if you like, alongside the city property. At 8 meters wide, if it was planted in the right way, that would be a pretty good wildlife corridor. Yes?
Through the chair, the staff intention is that that would be primarily a multi-use pathway as opposed to a wildlife corridor.
Well, it says that it's 8 meters wide, but the pathway looks like it's only 2.
Correct.
Maybe 3.
Correct. I mean, it would be vegetated on the verges, but it would not, at this point, it wasn't intent to be left. Well, there is no natural state.
Yes, but you could create it. I mean, if it's mowed grass, it's not much of a wildlife corridor. But if it's native plantings, it could be. But you're telling me it currently is not the intention for it to be so.
Through the chair, that's correct.
So if I look at the overall South Latoya, there's no intention to have wildlife movement across South Latoya, because that would be an essential part of it, other than it could move up and down Latoya Creek Park, obviously.
Yeah, I think, and I would defer to Ben and his team, but as you pointed out, I think if there's a wildlife corridor that exists, it's Latoya Creek Park.
Yeah.
As opposed to the site itself, which has been heavily compromised, as you're well aware.
Mhm. Okay. So my next question is, if we approve this park, is that the last time, this plan, is that the last time we see this until it's built?
From here on, it would be turned mostly to staff, and as the subdivisions advance, we would be doing the detailed parks planning, but it would be primarily a staff initiative.
Okay. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor Baxter. So I understand we have a presentation from Gablecraft. Ben. And Ben, I hope in your remarks you had a couple of questions that came up from Councillor Day and Baxter, so hopefully you'll be able to tackle them.
I can introduce myself at least. Good evening, committee and committee members. My name is Ben Mycroft. I'm representing Gablecraft Homes and Latoya South Development. We are here tonight with Tennille Thompson from Urban Systems and wanting to make a brief presentation just to address some of the structure and intent behind the parks plan that I believe you have received as part of your agenda package. And we would anticipate having all the time that you want to answer questions in detail as we go through. There has been a few questions already. I would be happy to answer those now or go through the presentation first and answer them at the end if that works. Okay. So I will make an introduction and Tennille will handle the majority of the presentation. And then, as I mentioned, we'll take all the time we need to go through in detail. So I just wanted to elaborate on some of the comments that Dennis had made. The Royal Bay Parks plan for Latoya South is one step along the way of a process that we started back with the zoning, the development planning and the adoption of the zoning bylaw in 2020. There was the parks terms of reference, which ended up forming part of the development agreement, which is a registered legal agreement on title and governs quite a few of the aspects around subdivision, park development, and other items that relate to the development of Royal Bay. I think it's, from our perspective anyway, the purpose of this parks plan was really twofold. It was one, really, does it meet the requirements of the parks terms of reference? Because that is the contract that we have with the city. And those were the items that this council reviewed and considered when the zoning bylaw was adopted. And so what we have here in this parks plan represents our interpretation of our requirements. So there's a number of things listed from, how often we have street lights to the type of garbage cans. We are required to have one grass playing field. There shall be 8 pieces of CSA approved playground equipment. and a number of other items, but very specifically listed. So while there are other objectives, and many of them are also represented in the City of Colwood Parks Master Plan, we essentially melded those two requirements. So the City of Colwood Parks Master Plan, along with the Parks Terms of Reference, really formed the basis of the Parks Plan that's before you tonight. So I'll just go into the timeline here. I think I can advance this. Marcy, could I move the slides forward, please? Maybe one more. Actually, so this is just a reference statements from the official community plan. If we could go forward one more, please. There we go. So this is what I wanted to focus on your attention this evening as we go through the process. So you'll notice on the left, we've got the zoning is adopted, parks terms of reference. We've spent the year and a half since that time, both going through physical reclamation of the old producer's pit. So it's a large brownfield former mine site, still in the process of reclamation. And so at the time of zoning, it would have been very difficult to pin down the exact details and shape and size of some of the parks, because there was enormous amounts of work to do. So we've been busy reclaiming the site. We've moved about 1.6 million cubic meters of material, and it represents one of the largest private reclamation of a brownfield site in British Columbia to date. There are bigger ones in Vancouver, but this is pretty big for Vancouver Island. I'd also like to point out that this is the same process that we went through in Latoya North. We went through a development agreement, parks approval by council of a parks plan. Following that plan, we worked through with staff at the detailed design level. And, I'm very proud personally of the parks in Latoya North. In particular, Meadow Park Green, I believe, represents a very high quality level of parkland. As well, our partnership with the city on the bathroom building, to my knowledge, is the only use of the CAC fund. We went through the design process, actually spent far more money than the city reimbursed us for, but it was a partnership that's worked well. And this process has been proven through that process in Latoya North. And so we're recreating it here, although in much greater detail. And I do want to point out it is imperative for us to move forward. Because of the terms of the development agreement, it is necessary that we move forward multiple items at once. So we aren't able to kind of sort of stop one thing to continue to consider aspects of the park plan. What we're here tonight to do is to ask this committee for your endorsement of, did we achieve the requirements of the parks terms of reference, and are we consistent with the City of Colwood's Parks Master Plan? And stage 2 is that detailed design component. And there are other objectives that the city has with regard to parks and recreation facilities that I'm aware of. They just don't form the consideration for this plan that's before you tonight. So we are wanting to work together with the city productively on things like expanded playfield opportunities, expanded amenities, bathroom facilities. However, that would be part of future council considerations, I believe, whether or not council decides to spend the City of Colwood's money from reserve funds or taxation or elsewhere, or more CAC contributions. Those can certainly be added. We're a willing participant. We would love to do that. But what we're thinking about here tonight is just, do we meet the terms of the terms of reference? With that, I'll just hand it over to Tennille, and we'll walk through the parks plan, and then we'll get into questions, if that's okay.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Ben, for the introduction. My name is Tennille Thompson, and I'm a landscape architect with Urban Systems. So I'm going to take you through in more detail to the Latoya South Parks plan. So as Ben spoke about, essentially what we did is we developed the document into 2 parts. So part 1 of the Latoya South Parks plan is the background information. So we looked at the site history, and obviously key to the site is the rock quarry, which dates all the way back to the 1890s and was a major employer for Colwood up to 2007. So we looked at that and for overall context, and then looking forward to transitioning this former mine to a desirable mixed-use hub, and to realize the vision of all the various planning studies that occurred. So we looked at just understanding the sort of overall context of the Royal Bay neighborhood for Latoya North and South. Understanding the various amenities that are to be included, including the Royal BC Museum, the proposed elementary school, and the commons, which include a number of shops and grocery and all of those things. So understanding that the context of how people would utilize the neighborhood, and forming our understanding for how pedestrians would move and circulate through the site to access the parks and trail systems and amenities. We also took a good look at the various policies and guideline documents, including the official community plan and the parks, recreation, and master plan, and identified in each of those the relevant recommendations and policies that would impact the Latoya South Parks plan. We looked at the various Royal Bay urban planning documents, including the visions and the Latoya South sub-area plan, again, to understand the vision and principles, all of that sort of arising to the parks terms of reference. So this is the sort of overall parks plan. It contains 17 acres of parkland, dedicated parkland, including one large community park, Quarry Park, centrally located. It also includes the 3 Latoya South Park additions, one up at the far left corner north, and then sort of more south, and then down adjacent to the city-owned lands. It includes 3 neighborhood parks. So the Gateway Park, Parcel B, and Parcel H, 3 urban plazas within the commons, the Common Civics Plaza, the Transit Exchange, and also includes Machosen Trail, and then a connected series of neighborhood greenways and dedicated park lanes throughout. So I'll flip to the next slide. So this one just breaks down, and I'll get into more detail for the individual park parcels in a moment here. This slide just outlines the land sizes for each of those areas. So there's 11 acres of dedicated park space for Quarry Park adjacent to the proposed elementary school, and then neighborhood parks and the community connections adjacent to the proposed Royal BC Museum site, and the city-owned lands, and again the Latoya Creek Park additions as well. So all of these park sizes are noted in the parks terms of reference. So for example, in the urban plazas, the park terms of reference outlines minimum requirement of 1 acres located within the commons, which we've been able to achieve with this plan. This plan is the sort of overall parks connectivity plan. So In the review of the city parks master plan, there is the proposal for a mountain to sea loop. And so we're showing how the Latoya South neighborhood connects to that loop. So it shows the various pedestrian linkages and connections both to Latoya Creek Park, as well as through the neighborhood, connecting to the various loops, including the proposed Colwood Loop and proposed Royal Route and Latoya Route. So this is Quarry Park, and I'll just take you through some of the key features. Starting up in the north quadrant of the park site, we have pedestrian connectivity, which includes accessible pathways that can take you all the way down and through the park throughout. So there's a series of ramps and also some lookout points. The key to this design in sort of the north area is the amphitheater, which takes advantage of the grading operations and the fill and sort of celebrates the history and context of the quarry. And so the idea with the amphitheater is that it can be utilized for public events and celebrations and festivals and things like that. There's also some picnic sites up in the north. Again, that's sort of the highest point of the park, so take advantage of the sea views. And then just in answer to Councillor Baxter's questions, there are 3 proposed access points to Latoya Creek Park, one at the far north of the park and then sort of central. If we can, at item number 17, trail access to Latoya Creek Park, and then there's a 3rd access point off of the Machosen Trail. So then as we go down through the park, there are 8 CSA play elements. And the key with the playground elements is that we're looking to provide accessible play opportunities and opportunities for all ages, and incorporating sensory and experiential play with sound and opportunities for kids to hide and use different forms of play. There's also a central plaza. And so the idea with the plaza is it's available space that can be utilized for food trucks in the future adjacent to the proposed parking lot. And provide more passive opportunities for parents to sort of socialize and hang out and watch their kids play. There is a sports field area. This is a 45 by 90 grass field that it can be utilized for various active recreation opportunities. As we move down further to the south, there's trail access provided throughout. Again, that meets accessible standards, and open space opportunities so people can throw frisbees, hang out, have picnics, do what they please in the open space areas. Yeah. This is just some of the imagery that's included in the parks plan. So to sort of point out amphitheater, grading, grass amphitheater, picnic sites, playground elements, and sort of nature themed playground elements, and open space activities for sports. These next few slides are what we pulled from the parks terms of reference. So 12 points that we work to satisfy through each of one of the conceptual designs for Quarry Park. Then this also just lists the park's terms of reference for the Latoya Creek Park additions, the commons, and the neighborhood greenways. Also included in the park's Latoya South Park plan is a wayfinding strategy. The wayfinding strategy in large part works to be consistent with the city standard signage. So we provided a series of conceptual designs to suit different needs for pedestrian and bicycle activity, and ensuring accessibility and legibility by the majority of users. And finally, included in the Latoya South Parks plan is the public art plan. And so the public art plan is basically a comprehensive public art plan that works to address similar to the Latoya Park plan. It looked at the history and sort of context, and provides best practices as it relates to public art, and provides a framework of opportunities and proposes principles to guide the approach to public art. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tennille. Just wondering if you or Ben could answer Councillor Day's question earlier about the trees that the Scouts planted.
Absolutely. I'll do my best to answer the questions. I'm not sure if I can remember all of them at the beginning, but actually through the chair, I'm not actually certain exactly where the Boy Scout tree planting is. What I can speak to, you might actually know, is I'll just bring up the parks plan itself. So as Tennille pointed out, I think, one of the questions was, is there 3 connections to Latoya Creek Park? And there is. One is shown in the top left. One is not shown in this plan because it is not an accessible trail. However, the one at the north and at the south, which we're calling Old Machosen Trail, and connects up to that little green area down in the bottom corner of the plan. So that's an addition of parkland to Latoya Creek Park to provide a bit more buffer, because right now it's just private land right up to the creek. I believe that's the area where the tree planting was. And that is captured and is dedicated, will be dedicated as parkland. And that is the intent. And that Old Machosen Trail, the history behind that was there's actually, it's the actual, at least part of it is the Old Machosen Road right of way. And it is our intent for that to be an accessible trail route that actually provides an accessible route into Latoya Creek Park, because I know that's an important objective of this council. However, it wasn't possible up at Quarry Park just due to the grading. There's a very large vertical difference from the tree edge down into the quarry floor. So I don't know if that answers the question or not. Okay.
On the trail, there used to be a sign up on the right-hand side identifying them as planted by the Scouts, and they were planted more than 30 years ago.
Okay.
So I just think it's important that they be recognized in your diagram of your roads for your development. It looks like there's a cul-de-sac leading up to that area. Just looking at your plan, it's on your slide that says Latoya South Parks calculations map.
Mm-hmm. So I could be wrong. It may be, I guess I can't see using this pointer, but the bottom of the screen that we have here, which is the Latoya South Parks calculations map, the area right at the bottom of the screen, there's that green triangle with the green line connecting it adjacent to the city-owned lands. I believe that's the area, but I'm not certain. No.
No, it's on the other side of the road, kitty corner from
Okay.
there. So this would be on the water side of Machosen Road, that triangle?
This would be, so Machosen Road is not shown, but you can see it on the right-hand side of the screen and it sort of disappears, but the
Oh, it
city-owned
might
land.
be.
So
Yeah,
Machosen Road actually runs on the right-hand side of the city-owned land there.
okay.
And so I believe that's the spot, otherwise it would be inside our.
I think you're right. I was thinking that Latoya Road was following the darker line there.
Okay, so what we've done with the boundary there is we've preserved the trees in those three areas. You can see the additions. So those are protecting existing trail features or significant trees that were there. So those have been retained and we're proposing to add those as parkland and would make up a portion of the 17 acres of required dedication. And there was value seen in that because of the mature nature of the trees and just providing additional buffer, especially at that south end of Latoya Creek Park, because what feels like public land currently is not. And so that addition of that land, I think, is important.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Day, did you have any other questions?
Not right now.
Councillor Baxter had a question around or a comment around the Old Machosen Trail corridor. So the intent of it certainly wasn't necessarily as a wildlife corridor. We do envision Latoya Creek Park, as it already is, to be the wildlife corridor. The intent with the Old Machosen Trail was really to celebrate the existence of, there's even some asphalt there right now that still remains from the old Machosen Road. Not that asphalt is special, but just to sort of celebrate that history. And our intent had been to install, as per the requirements of the park's terms of reference, a 2-meter wide multi-use path. And we would plan to plant it. I think there is some illustrative renderings and plan showing trees. We're quite flexible as to what the plantings would be. And we would be working with staff through that design process to incorporate any particular requirements of the city. The intent of it really was as a accessible connection route to safely convey people around the city land, because really we don't know what the future use of the city land is, and currently it's quite industrial. So we viewed it as a green buffer, and the intent is to plant some significant vegetation, but it was more intended as buffer. But we are open to direction from staff, certainly.
Thanks, Ben. We'll move on to Mayor Martin.
Thank you. Actually, this is, it's going to be a question for Gord. So sorry, Gord, come on up. And I'm sorry that I'm putting you on the spot, but can you talk about Latoya North and how it's operating, and if there's anything that we could have done differently in Latoya North, and have those differences been incorporated into the Latoya South plan?
Thank you. That's a great question through the chair. Yeah, I think actually they have. I think for Latoya North, as beautiful as it is, and it's going to remain beautiful, and it's going to be a very jewel of the Royal Bay area. What we don't see here in Latoya South is the amount of gardening that we have to do in Latoya North. So now we have a lot of the amenities of a park. We have some open spaces that on a maintenance side of things work much better for us. And you can see that in the costs that it costs us to maintain Latoya North and all the Latoya North Meadows North and Meadows Green, compared to what it will be for us to maintain here. So I see a lot of that as an improvement for this area. We have a beautiful butch art style park, and on this side we have a more open functional park for a lot of different activities.
Thank
That
you.
answers your question.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Parkinson.
Thanks, Chair. I got a number of thoughts here. Hopefully I can shotgun them out in no particular order. But firstly, of course, Ben, we all know that the Quarry Park area is where a lot of the sediments were dumped at one time, and I'm sure you've got all sorts of geotechnical reports assuring us that there's not going to be issues with those soils? And, you know, have you done that and have the staff had a chance to review them?
Through the chair, in answer to Councillor Parkinson, yes, we have, and do have extensive geotechnical supervision and involvement in all of the reclamation work that we're undertaking. Given the massive size of the site, as well as the massive volumes of material, as well as just it would be irresponsible to try to ship our problem over the Malahat. You know, there's significant volumes of material that were left behind as a result of the industrial use of the land. The quarry operator received all sorts of things on the back haul from selling gravel out, generally non-structural material. And so a lot of that is located in Quarry Park, including pond sediments from the washing of gravels that occurred at the mine. And we have a very robust and expensive reclamation plan. We're currently, we have, you know, full-time geotechnical supervision actually and reports. We don't have any specific reports for Quarry Park at this point for this committee meeting, as we would expect to get into a detailed design process with staff at a future time where we would incorporate all the detailed elements of that. But into some general points are the very top portion of Quarry Park is completely structural. So the edge up to the amphitheater, there's no real intended structural use of that area, but it would be a great spot for things like bathrooms. And then again, on the south side of Quarry Park is where we have additional structural areas. And although not part of the consideration tonight, I am aware that the city has objectives around some playing fields. And so we've got a large area that's being preloaded right now under the supervision of Thurber Engineering. That is an area that would be suitable for a future playing field, although it's not identified in here because it's not part of the terms of reference. And in the middle sections is larger areas of non-structural fill, which are perfectly suitable for things like grass playing fields, playgrounds, lightly loaded structures, things like that. But the reality of the site is we have what we were given at the beginning, and we've undertaken an extensive process to reclaim it under the supervision of geotechnical engineers, and it is suitable for the intended use, and it's pretty consistent with park development all over the region, I'd say.
Yeah, okay, no, thank you. I certainly didn't want to in any way knock the reclamation you guys have done out there. You're doing a crackerjack job. It's really very impressive to see. I just, you know, if there are issues, we just need to know what they are ahead of time and what can and can't be done. That's all. So it sounds like you're on top of that and stuff will be coming. So I'm certainly happy with that answer. Well, a few other things, but maybe my biggest thing is when I put on my parks hat, I just beam from ear to ear about this. I mean, I think this is going to be a fabulous place, and I like what you've done. But then I put on my active transportation hat, and I go, okay, how is this going to work? Do I really understand, you know, the trails, how people are going to get their kids to school on the trails? What do the trails look like? You know, which ones are paved, which ones are gravel? I know there's a lot of stuff in there. I've been trying to look at it on my iPad, the screen's like this, and I'm old. And so I guess at this point, I can't tell you that I'm really comfortable with all the trails. Are they in the right places for what people want to use? I think Tennille used the term pedestrian circulation, or whatever it was. Well, you know, so I know you guys are thinking of it. It just hasn't got to me yet. Which ones are how wide, which ones are hard surface, which ones are gravel. You talk about fencing in a lot of places, fabulous. You talk about lighting in a lot of places, fabulous. So I suspect it's all there. I just haven't myself yet been able to draw that out and not really fully understand it. And the chances are that whoever has fully understood it is way ahead of me on this one, and it's all perfect. But I guess I can't get there yet. I'm not there yet. So that's a concern I have. I don't know what you can say or do about it on the fly here, but I'd love to hear it if you got something.
I can certainly give a broad overview and we can go as deep as you like into it. I think part of the answer is maybe not in the parks document you've got. And part of it is during the rezoning, we established road standards for Latoya South that form part of the bylaw. And in those road standards, we have we call it a collector road system. It's really like a minor collector road system. And shown on this plan here, although it's difficult to see on this screen, any of those main boulevards you see on the screen that are lined by trees in the image. So the extension of Ryder Hesjedal Way, the extension of Dunlin Street that runs all the way down to Quarry Park. And then from that red asterisk that says Fire Hall, that road that runs down to the corner of the elementary school site. And so all of those sort of tree-lined boulevards are what we call the minor collector standard. And those all have unidirectional bike lanes as part of the road cross section. Except for Ryder, which has one two-way bike lane on one side of the street in order to carry it on from its existing design on the north side. So there is a very robust, I think, the advantage of a new community and a master plan community rather than like a retrofit downtown is right from the beginning, we plan to incorporate active transportation all the way back into the beginnings of the rezoning. So and it's really not targeted to commuter cyclists. It's really, and I think this was as a result of planner Dennis Carlson here, because how does the family with the kids ride their bike to school? So if you live in Latoya North, you'll be able to take the 3-meter wide multi-use path trail that runs through Meadow Park, take it all the way down. It takes you right to the new bus exchange we're building now. You'll be able to hop off of that and you can take 2 different ways down Ryder or Dunlin and ride in a protected bike lane. So you're not having to worry about traffic. And you can ride all the way to the elementary school, get all the way to Quarry Park, and in fact, navigate through Quarry Park and out sort of 2 or 3 different ways. So we do have very extensive active transportation planned into the community. It's focused around the core. So as you can see in here, the southern part of the site is less well served. And that's because of the planned intensity of development in that part of the site is more low density development. And then those are all asphalt or concrete protected bike lanes that are lit. The old Machosen Trail is the only one that's got some ambiguity. It's noted in the terms of reference as either gravel or hard surface. It's actually our intent, despite the ambiguity, it will just be a 3-meter wide paved bike path because it's needing to be accessible. And it would be inconsistent with anything else we've done at Royal Bay to this time if we did it differently. So we're quite proud of the connectivity and we think it's robust. Some of the connectivity through the parks isn't planned yet. And, right, we need to navigate around playing fields, for example. But hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that does help a lot. Thank you. Can I throw this one over to perhaps Rob or maybe even Gord? There's obviously a significant park presence here in Latoya South. We talked about the presence in Latoya North. There's a lot of your works that are centered in this part of the world. City Hall site is excellently located in the middle of Colwood, probably equidistance to a whole bunch of things, but does it make sense to think about a facility here for parks maintenance, to keep the equipment here and the people that are going to be working on it sort of closer to the bulk of their work?
Thank you. And through the chair, yes.
Thank you. Man, if we could all answer questions like that. Just let me, if I can just give me a second here, but I think I've, yeah, I think Ben's outfoxed me. I think you got all my answers. Well done. Thank you. Oh, no, actually, the only one, there is one thing that still does concern me, even with the quality of your answers. Tonight we've been asked to essentially recommend to council that we approve this parks plan. And charge off down on some 4 other tasks, sort of necessary tasks. And I partly because I am so excited about this and I think it's important on this council, it's a big decision that we get it right. I'm just wondering about the urgency of approving it versus chewing on it, thinking about it, you know, discussing, you know, wayfinding. Public art, I think, comes later. The wayfindings was, I think, was referenced as being just about the same as what you do in Galwood now, which is maybe all the answer that should be. But I'm just wondering if we're not rushing a little too much. I don't know how the rest of council feels about that.
Through the chair, Councillor Parkinson, I would, I guess I'll elaborate a little bit on my earlier comment. I would urgently request that council consider approval of our parks plan at this time. And the reason for that is that we are well underway on construction of massive amounts of infrastructure in Latoya South right now. And we are relying to a certain extent on a good working relationship with the city to keep us going. And the way that the development agreement is structured is clear that we need to receive approval of the parks plan in order to keep moving forward. And for us to go into a delay pattern on this parks plan would leave us vulnerable to significant problems where we would not be able to proceed with subdivision registration. And we are currently investing many, many millions of dollars into on-site works as well. In order for us to, we've got requirements to build the park by a certain, you know, we've got triggers that are needed to be met. So we're not able to kind of work one step at a time. And this was the system that was agreed to during rezoning. So, you know, does this meet the terms of reference laid out in the development agreement is the question that we're trying to answer. So we're hoping that council will agree to consider that question with our parks plan submission. And we are aware that there is significant additional hopes and expectations for recreation facilities, for example, at Royal Bay. And we are a ready and willing partner. We would love to, you know, I don't really like building roads, honestly, it's not very fun. I really enjoy the parks. I've learned a ton on the north side. You know, Gordon and I are working together on many aspects of making it great. And we would like to continue on that process with a positive working relationship with the city. And we're willing to entertain whatever processes that I think council is going to have to weigh in on and decide which route you're going to go. You know, do you want a turf field? Do you want ball fields? Do you want more bathrooms? What do you want? I don't know. Do you want a splash park, pickleball courts? You know, if you want to court some controversy, but we're really looking for the city to come up with what you want through separate processes. And then we're not in a giant rush to get started on the design. If the city needs some more time to sort of figure out some of those additional things, but we're hoping that you can limit your scope of review as are we meeting the terms of the development agreement? And that's why we're here tonight is, do we check the boxes on, is there lights every 30 meters? And is there a grass playing field that's 45 by 90 meters?
Okay, that's fair. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. I've got Councillor Day, Mayor Martin, and Councillor Baxter. Cynthia.
Okay. I was a little confused. I heard you talking about the accessibility and working to create it, but I really don't know where it's accessible and where it isn't on your plans. So maybe you could give me an idea. Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? Where are we at?
Through the chair, Councillor Day. So it's tough question to answer precisely, but I can speak in general terms and as specific as I can get. What is not accessible for sure is where it says Latoya Creek Park, there's a green asterisk there. And that's really pretty much the high point of the site and has been envisioned as a viewpoint. And there is it is a point of access for people to get trespassing through that spot. That's why we picked the spot, is people are coming up through Latoya Creek Park, but it's, you know, they're climbing up a steep embankment and it's dangerous. So that's an opportunity perhaps where if the city, for example, wanted to build more stairs in Latoya Creek Park, that could be a point that people could get up on non-accessible stairs to a viewpoint. And then you'd be winding your way down through a pathway that is not accessible. However, at the north end of Quarry Park, we did a fair bit of work on accessibility. And Neil, you can help me out where I fail here. The Zoom screen's covering up a little bit, but at the top of the screen, you'll see on the right some ghosted in angle parking stalls. So, and the white space that's in the top right of the screen is the elementary school land. So that's actually an area that effectively makes Quarry Park bigger. But what we have there is quite a lot of angle parking. And what we have done where it says number 3 and number 4, it's called the Northern Viewpoint and the Upper Lawn Access Ramp. That's very specifically been planned by Tennille so that you can park, whatever vehicle you come in, or ride a bike, or access using a sidewalk. You can use the at-grade pathway on a wheelchair to get out to the viewing platform. And so that viewing platform, although not the highest point of the site, is elevated. It's about 3 meters higher than the school site down below it. So there's actually fairly extensive views looking back down towards Mount Baker and Greater Victoria. So that is a fully accessible viewpoint for anybody. As well, there's a ramp down there. Number 4 is the access ramp that brings you down into the amphitheater itself and provides access to the 3-meter wide trail system within the park. So the trail, this plan is conceptual. Some things might move around, but you will be able to access all of the features of the playground in an accessible manner. We haven't figured out any of the details yet around like access to the playground. And I think we can do better on the playground than we did on Latoya North, learning some lessons there. It's perhaps not the most accessible playground. So I think that's something that we could work on better planning for when we get into detailed design. But in general, everything within this park is accessible. You just can't, you see the trail coming off number 17, that's that access to the lookout that would not be accessible.
For sure.
And then on the south side where we had the old Machosen Trail, which is just the green line beside the city-owned land, that is an opportunity for accessible access, say from the museum, where you could get down to Latoya Creek Park. However, to be honest, once you're there, it's not accessible. I mean, at Latoya Creek Park right now, I don't think is the most accessible park at the current time. But anywhere on site that we could, we've made it accessible.
There's maybe some potential. That little toe of the park is probably the most accessible spot.
I think so. Yeah. And we put a lot of planning and thought into that. Like that's probably the most planning that's actually been done on this park is the north end where the amphitheater is and that viewpoint. And that was specifically done that way.
Great. And just on the amphitheater, when I saw your slide with the idea of what it would look like, I asked myself, how do you maintain that?
Thank you, through the chair. That's a good question. That's a really good question. I mean, just looking at it now, it would be definitely, it would be handwork with, weed whackers and lawnmowers and that sort of thing. It's definitely doable. A little bit more time that it would take, but yeah, and I'm sure this is conceptual and how it's actually going to be built. I'm not sure, but that would be where we would go through in the planning process. But it's definitely accessible with the equipment, or maintainable with the equipment we have.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I love the idea of the amphitheater and what that would bring to the community. I think maybe there's some more work to do on how we make that achievable.
Good point. I think that would be hard to maintain. And that, yeah, it was a good image we found, I think, that showed kind of a casual amphitheater that wasn't, you know, like an urban kind of sculpted one, but I think we could, through staff and baked into the requirements of the terms of reference and the plan approval is maintenance approval and costing. And that's one of the items, I don't know if it's on the timeline, but that is one of the check boxes we have to go through is provision of maintenance costs and units for the Parks Department to be able to provide feedback at the detailed design stage. So there's been a little bit of work, quite a bit of work baked in by staff, making that requirement clear on us this time around.
And my last question is really about the environmental enhancements. So parks are where I think our community expects to find a place for nature as well as ourselves. For humans, for sure, but definitely, I think Colwood and Royal Bay, in fact, has marketed itself on the natural environment, the birds, the wildflowers, the wildlife that shares this area with us. So, did I miss something? Is there more that I maybe haven't noticed in your plan? For the environment, for our birds and deer and other animals.
I'll take a first stab at that, and Neil, maybe you can finish up for me. Good point. I think that my focus has been really on the fact that we're transforming this brownfield site into usable areas for habitation, recreation, and passive recreation as well. On the Latoya North side, we have completed extensive replanting and naturescaping using kind of this hugelkultur concept of burying organic material into the barren, essentially just sand. We've had some success with that. However, to be honest, the rabbits have actually destroyed all of the native species we planted. The only thing that survives is the pine, the fir, the flowering currant, just about everything actually. But I'm getting off topic. So on the south side, the concept has been a little less sort of naturescape reclamation and more programmed park space, focusing more on a recreation kind of a concept. Knowing that there's a need for things like sports fields and playgrounds. But there will be along the Latoya Creek Park edge a need for, and there has been some work done on making sure it's wind firm and planting some new trees along there. Planting hundreds and thousands of new trees as we've done on the north side. I think we'll be bringing back a lot of the bird species, like in Meadow Park now, we've got kestrel and all sorts of songbirds in there. It's actually lovely in the spring. From there, I'll hand it off to Neil.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, maybe just to add a couple comments. So I think for sure, the various cross sections for the streets indicate boulevard tree plantings. So that'll contribute to the overall urban forest. And then in addition, in Torre Park, there's lots of open space areas and opportunities for planting. And within that, there's going to be, or there'll need to be stormwater management features. So there'll be areas of depression and places where water will collect. So of course that will contribute to bird species and other forms of wildlife. So
thank you. Thanks, that's good for me.
Thanks, Councillor Day. Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. And actually, I'm asking very similar questions. Chair. Yeah, that's right. Similar questions. These are both directed to staff. The first is just in regards to, we heard Ben mention about parking, and that there are some parking outside, or that there's some angled parking. How does staff determine how much parking from a vehicle standpoint is necessary for a park? And is there a metric that we use?
Through the chair, yeah, short answer to pick up on Gord's responses, no. Staff have worked with Gablecraft to determine an extended parking that we think would be sufficient to service Quarry Park. I think in addition to the angle parking, there's 50 odd parking spaces that will be available to users of the park. So from staff's perspective, that's adequate.
Great, thank you. And my second question is about the amphitheater again. Royal Beach also has programmed, at least they've conceptually talked about having an amphitheater as well. Are we anticipating that we'll have two amphitheaters, one in Royal Beach and one in Royal Bay, or have we coordinated, or are we expecting that these are different, or I'm just trying to understand why?
Through the chair, so it's a bit of a race to the swift here, because as you've seen, Latoya South is before you tonight. The parks plan for Royal Beach, although it needs to start advancing here fairly soon, has not been thought about in that kind of detail other than notionally.
Okay. And sorry, and just one final question, just about the amphitheater. Are we anticipating that this would be an amphitheater that the city would program? Or is this just meant for like public use to like just on a day-to-day basis type thing? Just like what's the vision behind the amphitheater?
I think it's both. It could be programmed uses through the city for city events and festivals and things. And it can also be utilized on a day-to-day basis by members of the community. So yeah, I mean, it could be spontaneous kinds of things that happen. It's lookout opportunities, it's relaxation points.
Okay, I guess the reason I'm asking the question is I'm just trying to understand if this is something that the city said we are desperately in need of, and we need to program this, and that's why we need to have an amphitheater, or that it just fits the topography and relationship of the community to the site. Does staff know?
Through the chair, so when we were working through the parks plan concept with Gablecraft, and I'll probably take responsibility for this one, I presented the opportunity to Gablecraft that given the topography of the existing quarry, the pit floor, that there was an opportunity to provide some program space here that would be relatively protected from the elements, and also provide a great public amenity.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. We'll go to Councillor Baxter, and then I'll be looking for a motion.
Well, that's exactly what I intend to do, Chair. So Ben has made it very clear that what's needed here is a decision as to whether this plan meets the terms of reference or not. And I did actually read every word of the terms of reference in preparation for this meeting. And there's no question that this meets the terms of reference in my mind. That doesn't mean to say that there won't be further tweaks. Certainly looking at the experience in North Latoya, the staff and the developer have worked really well together, produce some good results there. So I think we can safely pass the resolution that is proposed in the report and leave the rest to that excellent cooperation. That doesn't mean to say that council can't have some input later in the process, as long as it's not too late. And if it is too late, I'm sure we'll be told very clearly that it is. But in the meantime, I move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. So the recommendation is the staff recommendation before us. I don't see any further, Councillor Day on the motion.
Yeah, just a quick question to staff. So there are 3 reports that are going to be coming back to council regarding acquisition of further parklands, regarding the fields, and regarding public art. And if I'm just concerned that by proposing this approval tonight without that information, we don't know if this is sufficient to meet the needs of our parks plan. It's consistent with the parks plan, but we don't know if there's a need for more parkland or not. So if this comes back with further needs identified, where does that leave us?
Through the chair, if that is determined to be the case, then presumably we would ask council to amend the parks plan to be consistent with the additional lands that council may or may not decide to add to the parks system. So they would be consistent.
Thank you.
Thank you. On that, I will call the question. Those opposed? Seeing none opposed, the motion passes. Thank you. We'll move right into item 5.2, a report from Yasmin on the zoning amendment application RZ 21-014 for 1952 Island Highway. And Yasmin on the hot seat.
This is the first time I get to come to the podium, so this is new. So I have prepared a brief presentation to just provide some context for the application in front of you tonight. It is rezoning amendment application 21014 for the property at 1752 Island Highway. The location is right across from the Juan de Fuca Rec Center, kind of the midpoint on Island Highway between Well Road and Wilford Road. The site is, I guess, to the south is the Courthouse property, and to the north is the Collision Center. And currently the site is occupied by Jasmine Restaurant. I'm supposed to be advancing. So yes, I think we're fairly familiar with the site of the restaurant, and it's been occupied with the building for many decades now. So the conceptual site plan includes an entry plaza that expands the width almost of the frontage with just the access for vehicular, enabling vehicular access, but a prominent entry plaza. And the site incorporates, there's some renders included with the staff report as part of the attachment 1, and they are meant to be massing model. So it's a massing diagram. It's not forming character yet. That work hasn't been done, but it is to give you an indication of generally the siding of the building and the scale of a 5-story building on this site. It is proposing 80 units, rental, purpose-built rental. In conversations with the applicant, this is an applicant that is committed to rental, the provision of rental units, and he has agreed to enter into a covenant securing rental tenure for 20 years, which is double the length of time that we normally see commitment from developers. So I would like to highlight that element. As part of this proposal and to enhance the ground floor commercial expectation of the mixed-use employment center, The applicant is also providing 10 units along the south property line, kind of adjacent to the courthouse property line. There will be 10 live work units. So it's a studios that will have a ground floor access for people that may want to have a commercial activity and live on site. The land use amendment includes an array of uses that are compatible to the mixed use employment center, but that are also a good match with the residential intent. So they are generally less industrial and more congenial to an adjacency to residential. Restaurant, retail, personal services, daycare, bakeries, artist studios, and the like. There is a table in the report as well as in the presentation that includes an analysis of the mixed use employment center policies and where we feel that these application has met the policies and the intent of the mixed use employment center. I realize that the one item 7.2.14.1.I is empty, but it refers to site adaptive planning and the expectation of retention of key elements of the site. This particular property is not a greenfield site, so it has been developed, and there is it's not located in an environmentally sensitive area. There's very little of retention except for some trees that line the south property line. Unfortunately, we have an arborist report assessing the health of the trees and the likelihood of retention given the location of the underground park gate, and it will be unlikely that they can be retained. However, we've built in, as part of the staff recommendation and the development agreement conditions, a contribution towards the replacement of those trees at the 2-for-1 replanting rate, and that they will be sizable replanting. So replanting at a sizable, at a sizable rate so that they can be integrated in the site and replace the existing trees. There are additional citywide objectives that we feel are very well met with this application, including focusing the growth on an intended growth area and increasing the pedestrian network. We are also asking, as part of the conditional rezoning, that the property grants a pedestrian walkway 1.5 meters in width, with the expectation that when the redevelopment of the court, the property where the courts are located, we would gain an additional 1.5 meters, so that we would have a total of 3-meter wide pathway that would lead to what now we see with these live work units. It could be like an internal walkway that fronts onto live work units and leads you back into Wilford Road, down and into the future. We're also looking to support the BC Transit rapid and frequent transit network, and this property is very well served and in very close proximity with the transit exchange, the Galloping Goose, and not to mention an island highway is an arterial road that is served by bike lanes on both sides of the road. The last policy, policy 9.2.2.2, supports co-locating rental housing with transit and other amenities. And this is a perfect location where there is the recreational center hub and the amenities of the Galloping Goose and a number of transit amenities that would be well suited to place rental and residential density on. I guess as part of the reimagining of Island Highway and the discussions that House Council has had as it emerges with the first application that we received for redevelopment on this stretch was 1764 Island Highway, which is 2 properties south from this one. And now with this application, so council has ventured into a visioning exercise, and that is well underway. It started back in November with an initial conversation with council, and earlier in March, the landowners have been engaged to try and identify priorities and opportunities and just a grand vision for the area. So we have consulted with the consulting group that is leading the engagement, and they have been supportive of the application that is before you, identifying the opportunities and the improvements that can be achieved through this application. As they seem to align, the objectives that have been met through this application aligned with the priorities that seem to be emerging out of the visioning project. That said, the visioning project will likely emerge with some direction in the 3rd quarter of 2022. But this application is not in conflict. We have posted the sign on the property, and we have made the application and documents available on the city website. Under the current Local Government Act, we're not required to host a public hearing for this application. So the staff recommendation is not recommending a public hearing for this application. That is not to say that we're not going to be collecting public input. So if council were to endorse the staff recommendation, which doesn't require a public hearing, we would still be sending out notifications and inviting public input prior to first reading of a bylaw. So in keeping with the Local Government Act, effectively what we do by not hosting a public hearing, we invite the public to come and speak to council the night that council is prepared to review the bylaw for first reading. So there will be an opportunity for the public to speak pointedly to the bylaw and the application, and it will be done as a first step before council considers that first reading. So there is, in waiving the public hearing, effectively, the provincial government has just advanced public input to the forefront of the discussion as opposed to the midpoint down the line. And so we are offering 4 recommendations. One, the staff recommendation, as I said, that doesn't include a public hearing and that would follow the Local Government Act. The second option is the staff recommendation in terms of the development agreement conditions, but that option 2 would add a public hearing requirement, which would mean we would follow our usual process, which is a public hearing after second reading. And the third option would be to defer the application for further information. And finally, the fourth option is that the application be denied. And that's everything for me, but I know the property owner and the applicant, the agents of the property owner who are WA architects are joining us virtually tonight, and they wish to do a brief presentation.
Great, thank you, Yasmin. So I will turn it over then to the applicant's representatives to make a presentation to committee.
Good morning, good evening, committee members, chairman, staff. Yasmin, that was a great presentation. You left me very little to discuss on this, but I do want to kind of walk you through kind of some of our design process to the rezoning. If I could share my screen, is that possible? Thank you. My name is Dave Chase McGrath. I am a principal at WA Architects, which we have offices in Vancouver and in Victoria as well. I'd like to just start just quickly walking you through, like I said, Yasmin did a really good job in describing the whole thing and the processes we kind of went through. One of the key moments on this, or key design intents on this, was to create a community within the community. That's how we kind of approach this. We did go back and forth. Initially, we had some parking in the front, and speaking with design intent from the planning department, we looked at it as an opportunity to create more of a community plaza in front of the commercial nodes, which fronts Island Highway. We did create, looking at the existing entrance into the Island Highway, into this lot, we kept the current location and pushed the building over to the side in order to accommodate as many units as we could. Now, one of the requirements was to have a commercial base to this. And so we looked at some of the uses that we were planning on this. And one that came up was having a work loft area that kind of fits within that commercial, but still keeping it as a residential use as well, if need be. One thing that we've been doing a lot with our developments is incorporating, instead of looking at the unusable spaces, the darkest corner in the parkade, is to start bringing out a use like a bike center. So really pushing that, especially for rental buildings, providing more amenity space and front and center space, not just hidden away. So we took the bike center area. We have on the ground floor, it's a 16-foot clear space, and so that it's usable for the work loft areas as well as for the commercial, but also gives us a very present bike center. And we're kind of showcasing this so that it does also, very easily accessible to the bike routes that we have on both sides of Island Highway. We had talked about also the pedestrian access point. When we first looked at this and I went out to the site, I noticed that there was a lot of trees, significant trees along this area. We did, in order to meet, the amount of parking that we cut out a bunch of the parking area in order to accommodate. And unfortunately, we're still seeing about how many of these trees can be retained. Some of them that are closer to that retaining wall, unfortunately won't, but we'll get further information on that as we move this design forward. There is a pedestrian path that leads us to Wilford Road in the back area, which was part of the requirements. But we also looked at how this could be incorporated as a public thoroughway that also then supports we were thinking of maybe artist studios or small businesses for crafts or things like this, that home businesses can thrive in this area and be able to actually bring the public through in this space. Of course, just each of these spaces would have a designated area for that unit itself. We've also looked at, I'll just move up to the next floor here. Some areas where we would be providing a multi-purpose room, like I said, we're trying to create a community within a community here. So be able to provide, because we are providing half and half, about 50-50 of 1-bedroom studios and then 2-bedroom units as well, that we want to be able to provide a amenity space as well with outdoor amenity for, say, some bigger family events or just birthday parties. My brother and sister-in-law lived for years at the co-op in Olympic Village in Vancouver, and it was quite it really has influenced my design a lot in just seeing how the whole place worked and how they provided these amenity spaces and how it created just you get to know your neighbors because of happenstance meetings and all that. And we really tried to incorporate that into this building as well. This will of course be further developed as we move forward in the design. And this is just a typical floor plate. I'd like to just share, where is it? Hope you can see that. It's just the 3D model. just to get an idea, as what Jasmine indicated, this is just really to show you the massing of the building. We would be doing the form and character exercises next as the DP application. But one of the things that we did want to create is because of the distinct commercial aspect of this whole area, we wanted to keep a lot of that commercial feel on it and then face the residential units off the side as well as in the back, because in the back it starts dropping off quite a bit.
Sorry to interrupt.
If you can see this is kind of the, yep.
We cannot see the 3D model.
You can't see the 3D model? I'm sorry.
No way.
Let me try again.
I can only see the toolbar of the SketchUp model.
Oh, maybe it's just showing this. Let me. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yes, no. We can see it. Yeah.
You can see the model?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Arturo. Just keep rambling on. So let me just go back to kind of the idea that off of this area, we've kind of represented what's on either side of this proposed development, if you can see the front of it. The commercial feel of it is what we wanted to just portray to Island Highway, that facade, and then have the residential units looking out onto the north and south, as we're showing here, and then have the live work lofts. And I called it just, artist row. And it's this concept of having a live work loft in this area, but still opening up to the public, where we have that 1.5 meter pedestrian walk. We've maintained the trees or replaced the trees if they failed. And also provide a designated area within each of those live work lofts. And this would then lead us down to the green space and to Wilford Road in that area. And because it does drop down significantly in that space. We wanted to have also quite a large space. So there's 16 feet of to clearance underneath, as well then the open area for outdoor amenity space. But like I said, this is just a massing model right now, and further development of this will happen at a later time. I really liked how we were able then to incorporate, this is after discussions with planning, instead of just bringing parking to it, just activate the frontage of it and create, we've just put this in for right now, but obviously we will be having further design discussions with landscape architect and working this area out to be more inviting. One of the criteria for code was that we needed to be able to back out, or to have an area for a fire truck or emergency vehicle to back out. So we considered bollards in this area, and then have at least an open space within that plaza that can be used for that. And the entrance to the residential area is just tucked away in the back, but yet we still are front end center, the bike center area, which I think would be an important aspect of this development. With that, I think Yasmin has covered everything else that we need on this, and I really thank you for your time to walk you through this. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
So we'll go to committee now. I've got councillors Day, Parkinson, Baxter, and Kobayashi. So we'll go with Cynthia.
Thank you. So on my initial look at your proposal, I didn't see any amenity space outdoors for the people who live there. Can you correct me on that?
Yeah, so we do have maybe what I'll change is to the plans. So 1 second, please. So we have an outdoor amenity space at this location, if you can see my right, connected to the multi-purpose room. So it is an outdoor space, but not at ground floor level.
outdoor space, but not at ground floor?
No, it is a patio area which we would be lining with landscaped planters.
Great. So but you don't have any play areas for children?
No, we don't.
Okay, and how are you planning to avail your units of the very lovely views over the Wilford Road area? I know it's steep, but it is actually quite beautiful.
Yep. So that is one of the reasons why this leg of the development occurred, is to actually face the end of the building as well. As you can see that the orientation of the site itself didn't allow us to put most of the views which are on the side, which you will still get views looking over into this area because of the ample balcony areas that we do have off of these units. But let me show you the model space in the back. And so it was our intent that these back units would be facing the green corridor, as well as these units here.
Way, I'm just wondering how that works.
I'm sorry, you had cut out there.
Sorry, you mentioned a pathway to Wilford Road. Where does that occur?
Correct. Along this area here. So these are the existing trees, and there is a 1.5 meter walkway that goes between these units. So let me once again. If you see this walkway here along the trees, and then steps down to Wilford Road.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe. Can you explain to me purpose-built rentals, that phrase, versus a covenant for rental for 20 years? And here's my simple understanding is purpose-built rental would be one title for the whole property and everything in it would be rented out forever. Whereas when you put a covenant on something, then presumably you're strata titling it into individual units, which could be sold individually at one point or all together in the future at some time. Have I got that correct?
Is this a question addressed at me?
Whoever can help, I would just looking for guidance.
David, did you want to answer that, or Yasmin?
I think Yasmin would be probably better suited to answer that.
Yasmin, go for it.
Yes, so I will try, and perhaps Carrie, who's our approving officer, can chime in if I get it wrong, or if she probably has more information to add to the conversation. So purpose-built rental is, in my understanding, is units that are built with the intent to be rented. And that is certainly the intent of this land, that this property owner, it is a long-term holder of rental property. And his intent is to build these for the income stream of rental. So his intent is to rent the units over the long term of these units. That's why his commitment is to ensure these for the 20-year period of a covenant. We've discussed other options like rental only zoning and other options to give council more of a certainty of the commitment. But I think this 20-year covenant enables flexibility for the owner, in terms that it is not in perpetuity zone for rental only, but there is a commitment that for the life of this building, most of the life of this building, this will be rental, and converting occupied units from rental do strata titling in the future would require council approval. There's nothing at the moment that precludes the applicant from strata titling the units individually prior to construction, but that is not the intent of this applicant. And yeah, maybe Gary can elaborate more if I didn't answer the question.
Thank you, Yasmin. Carrie, did you want to weigh in there?
Hi, good evening. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, great. Yeah, so Jasmine has definitely indicated that the requirement for rental is not embedded in our zoning. So we view rental and ownership under the same definition under apartment buildings. So in the case of a strata building where the individual units are stratified, if that is done prior to occupancy, then yes, if even with the covenant, at the end of that 20-year term, the owner could sell those individual units. If the units are not stratified prior to occupancy, this is what Jasmine was indicating, it becomes previously occupied. So under the Strata Property Act, we are required to consider a strata title conversion application, and the approving authority for that is council. So I hope that gives you a bit of clarity to whether units could be sold after that term of the covenant. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, and I appreciate it's 20-year commitment, which is longer than others we've seen, but I guess my preference would be for permanent rental, but enough on that. The 1.5 meter sidewalk, which will be ultimately the connection between Island Highway and Wilford Road. And there's talk of perhaps 1.5 meters being constructed now with perhaps 1.5 meters added if and when the courthouse redevelops. Looking at the plans, the 1.5 meter sidewalk is not proposed right adjacent to the property line, nor probably should it be because that would be right against the wall of the courthouse and there's trees on either side of it. So I would propose that should be a 2.5 meter wide sidewalk with the lighting, so that ultimately when it's connected, it makes a good connection through to that. And when we get to the motion section, I'll make that amendment if I may.
Thank you.
And I suppose it would be polite to ask for comments from the architect on that, but I'm pretty set on my ways, but feel free to argue.
No, I think making it as friendly as possible. I mean, we do, one of the things we do have to make sure it works out on paper for our client. But I think adding that element to this and being able to keep those trees or to put trees in there, make it more welcoming. So we can look at that.
I guess it pays to be friendly, Councillor Parkinson. Well done. Thank you. With that, we'll go to Councillor Baxter. Michael.
Right. My first comment is on the idea of no public hearing, but inviting comments before first reading. That's something actually I've been wanting to see us change to for a long time. I think the public hearing is held too late in the process. The idea of a public hearing is that the public might tell us things we don't know, and then we can take appropriate action. And that's much more likely to happen at the beginning of the process than it is at the end of the process. So I actually like that idea of getting the major public input earlier. So I'm all in favor of that. I would ask Councillor Parkinson to consider adding to his suggestion of a 2.5 meter wide walkway that it be in an SRW. I'm not sure if that's already been considered. But if it's not in a stat right of way, then it's it's not permanent. And a question for the proponent. I wasn't clear on whether it's your intention to build the walkway down to Wilford Road, or whether that's just a potential to be built later when that adjacent property develops.
David, that's over to you.
Thank you. The intention was to show that this could be done. I mean, it would be part of the development process, and seeing if we do have to connect it, then that's the way the design would go. But right now, it's just showing you that there is a connector to Wilford Road.
Could I add just one bit? Just so currently the courthouse is the property owner responsible for that portion of for that back kind of the courthouse is an L-shaped property that goes around this property. So in order to complete the path in order to build a full connection to Wilford Road, we would need the redevelopment of that courthouse property. But I think this already lines us up for a very clear plan and expectation of connection. So when the redevelopment of the courthouse happens, it is clear from the very get-go that the expectation is the widening and of that pathway and a connection to Wilford Road, with also an expectation of that live work or commercial units that front onto that path and kind of build that integration and pedestrian element to it.
Thank you. Now I want to address a difficult issue. Currently, if you're driving northbound, and maybe everybody knows this if they've been watching the emails late in the day, but if you're driving northbound and you wish to get to the courthouse, there's no left turn directly into the courthouse because the walkway, the pedestrian crossing arrangement cuts that off. And so what's been done up to now is that there was an arrangement, an informal arrangement between Jasmine's and the courthouse, which was brokered by the city, so that northbound traffic wishing to go to the courthouse could turn left into Jasmine's and then through the Jasmine site to get to the courthouse. And there was a connection made between the two parking lots. And the question is, what will happen if the plan as put before us is completed? And that is that anybody northbound on Old Island Highway who wishes to get to the courthouse is going to have to find somewhere to turn around and come back again. And in a normal city with a square road pattern, this would not be an issue. You just drive around the block and you get there. But that's not an option here. It's not an easy thing to find somewhere to turn around. And I have no idea of how the tenants, the court system look at this, but I think we should certainly explore keeping this arrangement alive. And I noticed that if you look at the arrangement for the fire truck to turn around, that takes you across at least the front half of the building, and then you would only need to continue that to the property line to complete the connection to the courthouse property. So I'll be proposing to add that to the resolution at the end, although I'm open to hearing any discussion about that if other people think it's unnecessary or inadvisable. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. I'll go to Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to make a comment. I go to Jasmine's once a week for breakfast. And so every week I go to Jasmine's, and it's a terrible place sometimes. It depends on the time of the day when you want to, Michael, to your point, trying to turn left there, because it's a short, because you have that crosswalk there, and then you have this little spot where you can get into the center. And if there's a lot of people trying to turn left there, it's impossible. And then what happens is the cars are out on the main island highway and they stop the traffic flow. I've seen this. So it's a great comment that you're making right now, because I've seen it and I've experienced it. So it's anecdotal, but it's certainly something that has to be addressed. You know, it depends on the time of the day. So I'm kind of worried about the traffic flow there. So that is an issue that has to be tackled. The second thing I just want to bring up is, I don't know if the proponent would welcome something. I'm just going to say something that's just on the top of my mind, something that is one of the higher priorities here in the West Shore. And that's our shortage of primary care facilities. And this makes a great thing, you know, because I see the apartments that are going there, and another part of the element of getting younger doctors to live in the West Shore is they don't have a place to live. And this would be an ideal thing that I'm looking at right now, that instead of a dental clinic, well, I know it's just a rendering right now, but a primary care facility with maybe some rooms or some of the apartments that can be, you know, dedicated to doctors and maybe nurses live there when they're young. And it's just an idea I'm just throwing up right now. But I mean, I'd even go for more density just for that to happen. And the third thing, so it's more of a comment at this point in time. It's just something I really think, if you want to get, you know, the public behind something like this, I'm telling you, you do something like this, and there's an overwhelming support that would happen for things like this. The last thing I just want to bring up is that something just irks me. It's nothing you did wrong or anything, Yasmin, but, you know, we talk about this gateway visioning project, you know, it's at the embryo stage, really. And I would prefer not to even bring it up as a criteria for deciding whether we decide this should happen or not, because it's too far down and it hasn't been approved. So it just bothers me, you know, we're getting ahead of ourselves. And it's just a comment. That's just me. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any questions. My comments in regards to this is I'm very excited about the project. I think it's exactly what the community needs. It's exactly what our region needs. We're taking one commercial business and we're creating 80 homes, and then we're also keeping the commercial on the first floor. It's ideal. And it's something that I think other communities will look at and be aspirational for. I am concerned about the turning and the traffic as well, and I have trust that staff will continue to work through that. I would, in response to Councillor Baxter's comment about it going through the courthouse, I think it's aspirational to do that, but it certainly would not be a reason why I would reject this program if it's not achievable. And in regards to Councillor Kobayashi's comments around having a primary care, I think that would be fantastic. I think what we're struggling though is the lack of labor. We don't have enough doctors. And so it would be great to build them, but we need to find the doctors to actually come into our communities. And I know that's a struggle that we're all having here on the Southern Vancouver Island. Saying that, I also would like to just reflect Councillor Baxter's comments in regards to the public hearing. I feel the exact same way. I would much rather hear the public's comments earlier within this process so that we have that ability to reflect what the community thinks rather than as we get into it, because I've read comments in previous where people feel like the decision's already been made. And so by having the public speak to it earlier, I think is a really strong approach. So with that, Chair, I'm happy to make the motion and then look to friendly amendments from, I'm not going to say what Councillor Parkinson wants to amend or Councillor Baxter, but I'll get it on the table and be open to the amendments.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I appreciate that. So we have a motion on the floor, and that's as written, which is option A, which is waiving public hearing. So on the motion, Councillor Day, you want to speak on the motion?
Thank you. Just the one thing I heard that I have never heard before was about the redevelopment of the courthouse. Is that something that staff has been made aware of?
So the courthouse, it's not a property owner, it's just a leaseholder. So it's a long-term leaseholder, but long-term could be a 3-year lease, and I'm not, it is a lease that gets renewed with the approval of the approving officer because it's a long-term lease, but they don't own the property itself. So it's a redevelopment potential because the life of the building will at some point, the lifespan of the building will come to a point where it would need to be rethought and reconsidered, but it's not, we have not been approached about a redevelopment. It's just, we know they are just leaseholders.
Okay, thank you. So I just think that the courthouse is actually a very important part of our community. And in my work for the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, it certainly has come up many times. And I think being aware of what the needs of our courthouse are is important to consider. I know it's very busy. I know there's been a lot of changes due to COVID with many more online options available to people, but the bottom line is quite often family court issues do end up in the Western Communities Courthouse. It's one of the busiest ones in our entire South Island. So it's an important thing that it work well, and currently we've made it work with the way the parking lots were able to accommodate one another. I'm sure it helped the courthouse visitors to be able to go to Jasmine's, and likewise it helped Jasmine's to have them there. So I'm very hopeful that it could be a positive relationship in the future, and given the shape of the lot, which I wasn't aware of prior to this evening's conversation, I think it's really important for the long-term vision of that part of Colwood. So I look forward to us trying to find the best way forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Cynthia. We'll go to Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move an amendment to item 2D, and I would like it to read, the owner shall at its own expense and to the satisfaction of the Director of Engineering complete or provide security and enter into a servicing agreement to design and construct a 2.5 meter public walkway with lighting in a statutory right of way along the south side of the site to the western boundary.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter or Parkinson.
I got a promotion.
We're just bookended by engineers. On the amendment, not seeing anybody who wants to speak on the amendment. I'll call the question then. You didn't want to speak on the amendment, did you, Michael, or did you? Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you. So I'll call the question on the amendment. All those opposed? None opposed. So the motion passes. On the motion as amended, Councillor Baxter.
So I'd like to add an additional item to the recommendation, and I guess it would best come after the statutory right-of-way future public pedestrian access as E. And if I can come up with this wording on the fly, that the a connection between the parking lot of the proposed development and the parking lot of the courthouse be provided at a width no less than 3.5 meters with appropriate traffic calming measures to ensure minimal speeds through that access.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. I don't see anybody waiting to speak, but I will actually speak to the motion. And I understand the challenges, but I won't be supporting the motion. For me, it's all about the pedestrian realm and the treatment of the frontage as we enter the city. And so I think maintaining that public realm and making it beautiful and offering space to pedestrians and tenants in the building is more important to me long-term. So I think it's important we really maintain that, because it will have an effect on our appearance, the street cred, as we enter into Colwood. So I appreciate the sentiments, absolutely, but looking long-term, it's just not something that I think is appealing or attractive as we're entering our city. So with that, we'll go to Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a quick one, Councillor Baxter, can you just clarify that your amendment to me? I'm not really clear on what I'm considering here. So if I can get clarification, that'd be great. Thank you.
So basically, there is currently a connection between the two parking lots in order to allow northbound traffic on Old Island Highway to get into the courthouse. If it wasn't for that connection, it couldn't get in there. We'd have to go up somewhere, turn around, come back again. So the basic story of the amendment is to continue that connection.
So what we're doing is we're obligating this developer to make that available for the courthouse. Then is that okay? Just want to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if it wouldn't be more appropriate just to ask for that option to be explored rather than making it a requirement. I hear Chair Logan talking about the public space and how important it is, and I agree. But there may be creative ways that the two could be combined. It may also be, at the end of the day, it may just be too damn hard to combine the two. So I'm very interested in exploring this idea. I'm not ready to require it at present. Although I'm not sure I'm not. So that's why, yeah, that's why I would sort of like to say, let's let staff and the applicant work on exploring to see if there's a solution that could work. I don't know if you'd be interested in that, Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe let's see how this pans out, and if it fails, then we can look for another amendment. Mayor Martin.
I won't be supporting the motion for Councillor Parkinson's comments. I will support what he's saying. If we look at options, that's great. But as I said before, I'm not interested in rejecting this project if it's not achievable. So by making it a requirement, I'm not comfortable at that point. I'm comfortable in listening and having staff to examine it and see if it's possible, but I won't support the motion the way it is presently.
Thank you. Not seeing any further speakers. So on the amendment, those that are opposed to the amendment? For opposed, the amendment is defeated. Councillor Baxter, did you want to make another motion?
Yes, absolutely. I was half of a mind to go in the same direction as Councillor Parkinson suggested anyway. So I would like just to add to the motion then the wording that staff should explore with the proponent the ways of preserving the connection to the courthouse for vehicles whilst at the same time making the front of the building as attractive to pedestrians and as attractive to passersby as possible.
Thank you. On the amendment, I don't see any speakers. I'll call the question. Those that are opposed? There's one opposed, and that'll be me. And so the amendment, the amendment passes. On the main motion as amended, I don't see any further discussion, so I'll call the question. Those that are opposed? Not seeing any opposed. So the motion passes as amended. Thank you. All right, we will thank you, Yasmin, and thank you to David.
Thank you very much.
So we will go into 5.3, report from Marley Bovin, the manager of finance, regarding sewer connection fees review. Marley.
Thank you, Chair Logan. So as discussed during the 2021 service review project, as we headed into the budget process, staff have analyzed numerous recent sewer connections to ensure that the costs charged for those connections are covering the expenses to construct the connections. There were 17 connections that were analyzed. 14 of those connections are what we call typical, and that are for the size of the pipe diameter 4 inches or 4 inches, Rob, sorry, or 100 centimeters, and $1,000 charge for the inspection chamber. So the sewer connection works as well as the inspection chamber. So the average deficit, so this is where the cost to construct the connection exceeded the charges or the revenue received, was just over $3,400 per connection. Some of the deficits were lower, so only a few $100s, and the highest was over $8,000, but the average and the majority of them were around that $3,400 mark. The sewer connection fees have not been increased since 2011. And there are other costs involved in the construction of the connections. So some of those costs are time spent by engineering staff through the application process through to the work order, which in most cases also include drafting a change to the, or including an extension of the local area service bylaw. Those are estimated at about $700. We are, as council is aware through the budget process, budgeting this year and next year for some software improvements that will help us with tracking the costs for this work as well as other work that's done by the city. So based on the recommendations of staff, the typical sewer connections would increase from the current total fees of $6,000 to a total of $9,900. The recommendation is that the increase be made to the fees listed as 1AI to, or I guess it's not I, it's 1 to $800 per centimeter of diameter of the pipe size required for the sewer connection works. That rate is currently $500 per centimeter. The increase that we increased the fee listed as 1A2 to $4,800 where the sewer connection works include a pressure pipe, which I will comment on is very rare. And that we implement a 10% overhead charge for each connection constructed by the city. And that is to help offset the cost that I referred to earlier. So approximately $700 in engineer staff time. And then there are other administrative costs that are involved in processing the applications as well. So we're asking that committee recommend to council that staff be directed to return with those increases and changes to the bylaw.
Great, thank you, Marley. We will go with Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much. Chair Logan, I was just gonna make a motion to move the staff recommendation. Second question I do have for you. Do you have an idea, an estimate, how much this has cost the city, over the last 10 years? Do you have an idea? It seems like a lot of money here that we've left on the table.
Through the chair to Councillor Kobayashi, I did not go back and analyze the last 10 years. We focused on the most recent connections. So connections, not all of the connections, but a good chunk of the connections that were constructed in 2021. So I do not have historical data past that for you.
And so the last question that goes along with this then, should we not be doing this more often then? Because it's the shock, right? It's the shock value. You haven't done it in 10 years now. It's, it's a big number, right? So if we were to do it all as we went along, it's not the big shock value what it is right now. It is what it is, and we can't give it away. So you have to recover it. So that's why I made the motion.
Through the chair, I would agree with you. I think that that's a good idea, and one certainly that with the implementation of the new software tools that I referred to that were budgeted and council approved, we would intend to review this on a more regular basis. I would recommend that even without the enhanced software tools that we do this more often. And certainly once we have the information that will come from the new software, we will have even better, more granular data in order to increase the fees again if needed, or decrease if that case proves to be true, which is unlikely. I would say costs would only increase, not decrease.
Okay. Thank you. On the motion, Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you. First, if I could, a couple of questions for Rob Boyle, since he's been here all night, just dying to answer questions. And to start with, congratulations on your appointment that we saw this week. Well done. I knew you win. My first question is, why do we do these at all?
Through the chair to Councillor Parkinson, thank you for congratulations. What was the question?
Why do we do sewer connections? Why is that a city task instead of contracted out?
Well, it's a combination of both. The public works is involved with anybody connecting to our sanitary system. We do the maintenance of the system, and we're ensuring that any connections to it are done to our satisfaction. The small connections they go in our roadways, they connect to a live pipe. I.e. if there's a pump station close by down on a live pipe and somebody throws a rock into the pipe when they're doing the connection, it ends up and it takes it a pump. So there's all kinds of reasons for us to be involved with it. You're right. We could probably not do them and have it all contracted out, but then there's still a cost to the city to inspect and review the works that are being done within our right of way.
Did I read it correctly that it said that public works inspector is on site for the entire connection process and it's done by a private contractor?
That's what we endeavor to do, yes.
Is that standard practice on city works to have an inspector?
It has been for the last 4 years.
So all subdivisions have an inspector on site full time?
All subdivisions have a qualified professional that signs off on those connection works.
Thank you. So here's my thoughts on this. Anytime that we as a city give a benefit to an individual that's not equally shared by everybody, we're subsidizing that individual. I've spent a career trying to take the costs of everything and rolling it into hourly rates of what it might be to try and come up with, in a good year, maybe a 10% profit. And I can see the city's not a profit generating thing, but in reality, if we start with the 13 hours of engineering time at an estimated cost of $700, that, my understanding, would cover the cost of the salary and probably the benefits for the person involved for the 13 hours. It wouldn't cover the costs of the desk and the computer and the office and the heating and the cooling and the whatever else. I mean, typically in the engineering profession, a multiple of 3 times somebody's wages would get you in the ballpark of your overall costs. So it's not $700, it's $2,100. So the costs of the crew out there, I'm sure, are not calculated for the overhead costs of the pickup trucks and the small equipment that's gone in there. So I mean, I hear what Rob says. I understand that we don't want just any inexperienced, unqualified person cutting into our sewer line and damaging it and who knows what else downstream. But frankly, we're not coming close to covering our costs on these things. And you know, so we look at what it cost last year and said, oh, well, let's charge that next year. But we don't have most of the costs in there. I think, you know, of course we should increase the costs. I don't know if we have a backlog of these things that we're going to deal, but I think we should think long and hard about whether we want to be in this business. And if we want to be in this business, we should price it at a number that's competitive with what it would cost for somebody else to do it. Otherwise, you know, the guy who gets a cut rate price on his sewer installation is getting a benefit that we can't offer to everybody in town. So I'm very concerned about this. I don't think that we're capable of capturing our full costs on this. And I also see how much those bloody bylaws that we pass every time with the sewer connection expansions that drive me nuts. I can see what they're costing and the time involved. Yeah, I'll support the motion, but I think we have to go a lot further and really understand the real costs of doing this work. And if there's not people out there prepared to do it in the private sector, maybe we have to keep doing it. But I would certainly lean towards letting the private sector do it and doing the level of inspection that Mr. Boyle says is standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Day.
Thank you. My question is for the manager of finance. This motion, it didn't really go into alternate numbers. So I'm assuming that the recommendation will increase the recovery to 100% based on last year. Is that correct? To the best of our understanding.
Through the chair, that's the intent. Knowing that there are changes and we are using averages here, but the intent would be that if we took all of the connections once we implement these increases and look at all of the costs that we are able to track, including allocating the engineering staff time to it, that we should be breaking even. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Mayor Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, I will be supporting the motion. As everyone has also spoken to, I also agree that this should be a 100% recovery. But can I just get clarification? We're talking about going from the road to the property line. Is that's what we're talking about here?
Well, through the chair, I guess I'm the most familiar almost with the sewer bylaw. Yes, we're talking about the sewer connection fee, and the sewer connection fee is the cost of going from the main to the property line.
Right. So that's what I was clarifying. So listen, I'm not in construction, but man, that seems expensive. I'm sorry, because if you're looking, for example, my property, that's 6 feet. So I'm spending $9 grand to get 6 feet. Like that seems like a lot. Hey, I'm just saying it feels like that, but go ahead. You clearly want to say something about that.
Given the restrictions that I understand that we apply sewer connection fees to, it is one fee. It's not, it doesn't matter whether you're the short side of the road or the long side of the road, or whether you're serviced by a rear easement or anything else. So there will be service connections that are cheaper to do and some are longer to do or harder to do. We have not explored that option yet. I mean, a sewer connection on Sioux Road can't be compared to a sewer connection on Torre or anywhere other local roads. So there's all those complications that you throw into what a sewer fee is. There is a capability in the bylaw for a owner to do their own connection and pay for the inspection parts. So there is an option for that to happen.
I'm sorry, I got caught off guard by that. So you're saying that as Councillor Parkinson talked about, that we could theoretically have somebody from not the city do the work. You're saying that that's an option for residents right now?
That is, yes, it is. They get an 80%.
That was something I was never aware of. I mean, I would have not paid that amount. I would have paid it myself to have a private funder do it. Jeez. Sorry.
Okay, so let's
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah.
let's,
Sorry. I'm done. Thank you, Chair.
keep it to the motion. Yep. Thank you, Mayor Martin. Clearly, I should have shut you off.
Yeah, you can keep going.
Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, just a slight clarification for the mayor. It's not from the road to your property line, it's from the sewer to the property line. The sewer, as the Director of Public Works, congratulations, was pointing out, that sewer could be anywhere in the road, and the road might be 5 lanes wide. But anyway, speaking to Councillor Parkinson's point about 3 times the direct or the obvious cost, if you like, I did work for another municipality that did precisely the calculation you're talking about in great detail, and they came up with 2.5 times, so very similar. Because in addition to all the costs that you mentioned, the more engineering staff you have, the more public works staff you have, the more finance staff you have, the more administrative staff you have, the more personnel managers you need. So all of those costs have to be factored in. And in the end, it's somewhere in the region of 2.5 to 3 times. And I don't know if we want to go there, but if we're going to go there on all fees, then I think we need to make the decision, let finance know, and that would come back around the next time they look at it. But I think for now, we just need to get this increase in place so that, as Councillor Kobayashi was alluding to, we stop bleeding money every time we put one of these in the road. And I just want to say it's a very, very clear report, and I'm very glad to see it. And it took me no time at all to read it because it's so well written. So thank you for that. And with that, I'll be supporting the motion. Have we already had the motion? Yes.
Thank you. Briefly, Councillor Parkinson, and we'll call the question.
Yeah, sorry. Did I understand that the short side connections on a sewer that's on one side of the right of way and the long side connections would be priced the same way by the city?
Yes, currently under the bylaw, that's the way it's written. It does not dictate the length of the sewer line. From the main to the property line.
So if the sewer is 6 feet from my property line, I may decide to do it privately. And if it's 60 feet, I might decide, take the city's price and run.
That is a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, yes, let's increase the fees tonight, but this needs a lot of work. This is just not right. Thank you.
All right, good conversation. I don't see any other speakers, so I will call the question on the motion. Those that are opposed, don't see any opposed, so the motion passes. Move adjournment. All those opposed, not opposed, passes. Thank you.